to attend Stanford University. And so again, what we do is we really work with the students not only to get into graduate school, but our goal is to make sure that they're funded. If you're looking to kind of go to graduate school, there should be no reason, particularly if you're looking for the PhD, that you should have to pay for graduate school. There are funding mechanisms out there in many different formats that you can start to kind of consider as you're exploring graduate school. And some of them, you may have to be creative to kind of get a sense of what that's going to look like. Before we get started, just to get a sense of everyone here, if you guys could kind of use the hand feature, or just clap your hand or raise your hand in your thing. If you're interested in graduate school specifically, once you graduate from UCF, then put your hand up so I can just get a sense of who is interested in graduate school for the presentation. Okay, so I see we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, perfect. And so then for the, if you're interested in medical school or law school, please let me know so that we can kind of get a sense. Okay, so we have a couple also. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is specifically for graduate school. I'll briefly kind of mention in some of the slides some of the funding for professional schools. I would make sure that I suggest to all of you that if you are looking to make sure that you have an opportunity to speak with pre-health and pre-law. They have a lot of virtual workshops that they're also doing this summer and the rest of the semester as it relates to the application process for professional school. But for the most part, we'll deal a lot with graduate school in our presentation today. So the Office of Prestigious Award is another kind of office that you definitely should be able to know about. They are affiliated with the Honors College, but they are open to all students on campus. And so a lot of what they do is really work with students to help identify some of the larger prestigious awards that we'll talk about a little bit later. And on their website, opa.ucf.edu, you can find a lot of information in terms of the different scholarships and fellowships that are there, the descriptions of the awards, and then also a guide to really how to pull those together. So I definitely would say that that would be a resource also for you as you're looking to move forward. Also, so you know that after the presentation, we'll follow up with a quick email to give you some additional resources and an evaluation just to kind of fill out. So a lot of the resources will give you some additional ones related to the grad application process. Another office, as we talked about briefly, is the graduate school. And so at UCF and all institutions have a graduate school, and that typically is another place that you can kind of start to kind of find information about specifically university fellowships, grad assistantships that we'll talk about a little bit later, tuition reimbursement, remission, health insurance, external funding, and then other funding sources. For example, UCF has $2 million in university fellowships that they give out to students, and so there are a lot of opportunities for students to look to kind of secure funding, and oftentimes it's in places that you may not even think to kind of ask or to look. And so again, we'll start to explore that, and then if you have questions, please feel free to throw those in the chat, or you can ask them at any point during the presentation. So the types of funding support that we're going to talk about, there's fellowships, assistantships, and loans. Those are typically the three that you'll start to kind of hear. Fellowships, as you kind of see, they're not specifically linked to a work that you may get. Those are typically ones that you get in exchange for some type of merit that you have received, either academic or in nature that you have done. And those typically become form of payments that you receive, and sometimes they're internal fellowships and sometimes they're external fellowships. Assistantships are another sort of funding mechanisms that a lot of students will see in their funding packages, and that typically is tied to an hourly kind of requirement of 10 to 20 hours per week. And so if you think about in some of your classes, a lot of your classes are run by grad assistantships or grad assistants, either a teaching assistantship, or there may be a research kind of assistantship that you would receive, but it typically is in exchange for some type of employment opportunity that you would be engaged in within the department or the program that you're in. And then obviously there's always the loans. Obviously the caveat with loans is that you always have to repay them. And what we always encourage students to look at is to apply for FAFSA, and always check the boxes of different kind of things as you're applying for graduate school. But also by completing the FAFSA, that allows you to be eligible for a lot of different funding opportunities if they are available and if you do need those. And so again, continue to kind of fill out that FAFSA as you're transitioning to the next stage in your graduate education. Some additional types of funding, and then we'll kind of break down some of the other kind of things. Oftentimes there are students that start to work full-time at the institution that they're interested in. And so that allows some students to receive employee tuition reimbursement. Either that through the institution because they're there, or oftentimes if you are employed at a place, many times in a lot of the engineering firms or computer science firms, a lot of the companies will allow students to go back to school in exchange for years of service with the company. So that's something to kind of think about also, is that if you are looking to transition into employment right afterwards, you may want to ask your employers even during the interview process if they do have tuition reimbursement or opportunities for students to go back to school, because they will also see the value in you as you're looking to kind of continue your education and bring that back to the company. Many institutions, again, as part of their employee benefits, have opportunities for students to take classes. So again, as we mentioned, a lot of folks may start to work within the institution, and then as part of that employee package, continue their education at the institution they're part of. Scholarships is one of the final things that I think a lot of students at the undergraduate level mainly know about in terms of the opportunities for you to look specific. There are scholarships in every different kind of opportunities for students that are left-handed, for students that were from a different county kind of growing up, or and so again, looking all over the place. One place that a lot of students would be interested in looking at for opportunities for scholarships would be the alumni relations office. And so the alumni has a lot of different funding opportunities through scholarships that students can apply to. And typically students only think that they have to be a graduate of the institution to take part into it. But that's definitely a place for you to also look. So just to kind of take a break and kind of go back to the graduate versus the undergrad. Again, for the FAFSA, you know, definitely that's one opportunity that most students may engage in at the undergraduate level. At the graduate level, it's a little bit more difficult to get scholarships because, as we mentioned, a lot of the funding comes in terms of fellowship and assistantships. And really the process is really on your own. And so you've got to be able to really know your discipline and know your degree and know the different funding opportunities that you're interested in working with. And so just as you would be researching institutions for funding, for graduate school programs, you have to also take some time to kind of look at what funding opportunities are available for you at the institutions that you're interested in applying to. And as we talked about before, typically at the PhD level, all programs typically come with funding at the PhD program. They typically fund students in terms of a stipend, tuition reimbursement or tuition remission rather, and then also there is health that's provided. And so again, that's something to kind of think about as you are looking to kind of move forward through the process. Typically at the master's level in many master's programs, funding is harder to kind of get, but it's not impossible to kind of look at that through the process also. George, will you let that person in that just came to the...
Oh yeah, I already let them in.
Okay, thank you. You're so on top of it, sir. So another kind of thing when we think about kind of funding kind of things, again, as we talked about, if you are in a STEM discipline, so just to kind of see a show of hands, who is in a STEM discipline? Okay, so many of you are in STEM disciplines. So for many of you, funding at the next level, particularly at the PhD, should not be an issue as you start to kind of look at a lot of what they're going to be doing in terms of a lot of the the opportunities for students at the master's level. Typically at the master's level, again, funding may be harder to kind of find. They typically look to kind of fund the doctoral students first, and then in some of the programs, they look to see if there's funding left over. Typically, the different graduate programs, some of the master's programs are more of fast tracking people into industry. And so again, a lot of the students that may be looking at the master's programs may look to kind of get funding either from their institution or grad assistantships that would allow them to kind of work. And so again, if you think about a lot of your classes, a lot of them may be teaching assistantships, but at large institutions, there's a lot of opportunities for students to capture grad assistantships. If you think about the student union, all throughout the student union, there's graduate students that are working in assistantships in exchange for a stipend, tuition waiver, health insurance, and teaching. So think about those things that you do well. Think about the student organizations that you're in. Think about all the different kind of mechanisms or things that you have been associated with. If you're associated with with ODI, they have grad assistants that are working in exchange for opportunities to kind of assist on different things in the college. So again, you have to kind of get creative and think about all the different kind of resources in addition to what the program may specifically offer for you. As we talked about before, professional study is typically not supported, but there are also mechanisms that folks have used in the past to apply for funding. Typically in medical school, if folks are interested in kind of working in areas of high need or in rural communities, there are ways to kind of take part of your student loans taken off based on where you're looking to kind of work. And so again, it's going to take some time for you to kind of figure those things out. But that's one of the things is that you can start to kind of investigate and kind of ask. As you're exploring graduate school, a lot of times if you ask the current graduate students that are part of the programs how they fund their education or what are some ways that typically students would fund, the graduate students have no filters. They will tell you everything. They will be oftentimes the best kind of people to go to find information about fellowships, about jobs on campus, and even housing and all the other kind of things. So again, utilize the current graduate students that may be in the institutions or the programs that you're interested in applying to. So as we talked a little bit about kind of the grad assistantships, those again are typically offered by the institution, specifically the program or the department that you're working with. And not always, but typically in exchange for some type of work, either working in the lab of a faculty member or teaching a course, you will receive tuition waiver, stipend, and health benefits. Again, it's based on the number of hours that you're going to kind of work. And typically that is a yearly contract that you're on as you're kind of looking to kind of move forward. And so again, one of the things that you have to kind of think about when you're thinking of graduate school and your funding is trying to figure out, is that something that covers you for the whole year, or if that's something that covers you for just the academic year, and then you need to kind of figure out some things for summer. So we have a question from someone on how do you apply for graduate assistantships? And so typically, excuse me, it's a very good question. So typically on your application when you're applying, there will be a box that's on there that asks different questions about different fellowships and different kind of things. A lot of times they're looking to kind of see what you may qualify for. Typically, the first type of funding that you're usually going to get as a PhD student will be in a grad assistantship. So those typically are, the application is part of your graduate school application that you're applying for. And so they consider you for funding in that capacity. As you're having conversations with faculty about the programs, you can always ask them what are the typical ways that students are funded. And then they would let you know grad assistantships, and then, but typically it's through the general application process that you're applying to. If there is another office or another program that has another assistantship, then that would be different. So if, for instance, if you were interested in working in Greek affairs to be the grad assistant for Greek housing, then those kind of assistantships are typically listed through the university. Oftentimes, it's kind of hustle funding. I tell students is that you just got to have kind of go around and see where their different kind of opportunities are. Within different universities, there's not kind of one general place that they list all their assistantships, but the graduate school would be a good place to kind of ask. Oftentimes, if there are higher education programs within the campuses, a lot of folks will send those assistantships to those type of programs. So,
can I chime in?
Yes, please go.
This is one of the places that I would say, like, don't be shy. Like Michael said, I've had students who have just like called, emailed and said, I'm starting the program next fall and I'm really interested in assistantships. Would you have anything available? And typically I will reply back to them. I'm sure some offices don't. I remember one year, I don't know if you remember this, Michael, we had a student who not only did that, I think she was an international student looking for an assistantship, but she also really researched us. And the stuff that she put in the inquiry told me that she'd done a great job researching our program, which is part of what we want, how we want our grad assistants to be. So I encourage you, if you're interested in a master's degree and you're interested in an institution and you're interested in perhaps securing a grad assistantship, that you go to different offices that may have grad assistantship positions and email them, let them know what program you're joining and why you're interested in perhaps working with that office.
And exactly, as Dr. Toros mentioned, also think about the things that you're good at or things that you have experience with. So that if that is, that you speak a foreign language, if it's that you have had leadership positions, if you have had housing experience as an RA, think of those different experiences that you've had in your undergrad, and then those are the first offices that you should also kind of look at if your program does not have funding. So you start to kind of do the research, as Dr. Toro said, on the office, and then send them a general inquiry that says you're a student who's been accepted to the XXX program, whatever it is. You're interested to see if they have any open grad assistant positions attached to, find your CV. And so again, a lot of it is on you to kind of figure those things out. And again, the more that you can do to research, the more willing they are that if there isn't a position within their office, they may kind of send it over to another office that may be able to help you. So again, some kind of key things to kind of think about when you're looking at kind of some of the internal fellowships and scholarships. Obviously it's important to always kind of keep your grades up. For some of the funding opportunities, there may be a GPA cutoff. For some of the fellowship opportunities, more so for the large external fellowships, there may be a GRE requirement, and the GRE is the standardized exam for graduate school. And so again, you want to make sure that you do your homework to see what the requirements of the application is and what the eligibility requirements are. Like everything, strong letters of recommendation are going to be key for you as you're pulling those together. So again, think about for yourselves right now. Think of if you were applying to graduate school or to a funding opportunity or an internship or whatever, do you have 3 letters of recommendations right now that you would be able to ask that would be strong? So again, think of that. If the answer is yes, congratulations, you've done amazing. If not, think about the ways that you can start to kind of build that list of folks that can serve as strong advocates for you in the process.
And we have a workshop next week on that, so join our workshop.
Wonderful plug right there. See, AAP coming to help you in every way possible. Also, connect with faculty. I don't know if George is going to be on that also, but we'll have another phenomenal student. So obviously connect with faculty and coordinators at the graduate programs, and then you can also start to kind of look at some of the different opportunities that are out there and use UCF as an example. One thing to kind of think about as you're looking at different fellowship opportunities or funding opportunities, you may see something that says a priority deadline. Anytime you can kind of hit the priority deadline, you try and do that. What happens is that typically a lot of the funding will go at the very beginning. This also is kind of based on students that may be applying to graduate school. The earlier you apply, oftentimes funding is kind of allocated at the very beginning, and then the later on, there may not be as much funding that's left over. And so again, those institutions that you're very interested in, make sure you do your homework to make sure that you're meeting the deadlines that they have placed there. One of the things, as you can also start, is there are some external fellowships. And so we talked earlier about funding that comes from the institution, and then there's also funding that comes from external sources, typically funding private corporations or foundations that allow you to kind of get the funding based on your academic kind of your academic record. Some of them have built-in opportunities for you to engage within them after you have been on their fellowship. And so this is a list of just some of the funding, but more importantly, what we'll send you also, there's a link where UCF on the graduate school has listed some external funding. One of the ones that we're just going to highlight very briefly is the NSF, National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship, which is like many of them, as we talked about, are based on merit. But the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship is 3 years of funding. This says 32,000, but it's 34,000. And then it also has that's the stipend that you, so you basically have 3 years to use 5 years of funding. Plus you also get tuition. And so basically you're walking into a graduate school with basically a check for $138,000 to be able to kind of transition to that institution. And really that allows you to really open up doors in terms of the type of research that you're interested in. It also opens up doors in terms of institutions that may have not looked at you seriously before. Now they're excited because you're bringing money to their institution. The Ford Foundation Diversity Fellowship, if any of you out there are interested in really becoming future faculty, the Ford Diversity Fellowship would be one to really look at also. And then there's the National Defense Science and Engineering kind of graduate fellowship. Again, these are just kind of some examples of some funding opportunities for students that come with a stipend, tuition, and health benefits for some of them. But the nice thing about this, that it's called portable funding, and so it goes with you regardless of what institution you select for graduate school. So we have been very fortunate within the last 12 years, I guess now, through the Academic Advancement Program, that several of our students have won the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship. And so I'm going to see if I can do this over here now. So then there he is. There is George. So George was fortunate enough to win the fellowship, and so that allowed him to to really help dictate the type of research that he's interested in doing, kind of excuse me, moving on for graduate school. So if you have any questions about external fellowships or what that kind of means, or even the process around that, definitely I think George would be a good person to kind of follow up with in terms of questions. But now he's walking with a nice little check to the graduate school to help fund his graduate education. So much like any other application, many of the fellowship applications mirror the grad school application. So you'll have a personal statement, which there was a workshop that just happened on personal statements through AAP, but there will be another one hopefully during the summer, definitely in the fall. They will ask you to talk a little bit about your research plan. And so you'll have to kind of articulate what you're interested in kind of exploring graduate school. Letters of recommendation, as we mentioned, a resume or a CV. If you have not created a CV and you have a resume, the summer is a good time to kind of start to kind of pull that together. I know that there is a online workshop that the Career Services has about creating transitioning from a resume to a CV. So that's something you may want to take advantage of this summer. Some of the fellowships may or may not require the test scores, which will be the GRE. So you have to kind of figure that out to see when those, if those are required. The GRE, as many of you may know, is offered pretty much, 365 days a year. You can take it multiple times. If you are interested in applying this upcoming cycle and the GRE is required, that's one thing you're going to have to kind of figure out because, obviously in our current situation, it's a little bit harder to take the GRE at this point, but they have created some workarounds for students. And then transcripts. So again, much like the application process, any institution that you've attended prior, you would have to have a transcript that you would provide with things. So some kind of tips to kind of think about as you're kind of moving through the process. If you are thinking about graduate school, start the process at the same time to kind of consider funding. Again, much of your funding may be built into your specific programs. Start having those questions as you're kind of looking to kind of think about again who you are and what you kind of have. So if you have undergraduate research experience, that can always be something that can help as you're kind of thinking about the next steps. There may be some funding opportunities that are based within your discipline or the student organizations that you're part of. Some of the kind of things will ask for competitive GPA and test scores. So again, kind of consistently trying to figure out what the eligibility requirements are for those things. And then again, can't stress enough the letters of recommendation. Again, as always, read and follow all the instructions on there because you're spending a lot of time and energy to make sure that you're submitting the correct materials. And then if you have the opportunity to do that, submitting early for your applications will allow you that opportunity to kind of do that. The typical time frame for the application process for external fellowships, those are typically October and November. And then the grad school applications are typically December and January, and then February for some of the master's kind of programs. So again, if you think about it, you'll be applying a year before you're actually interested in entering graduate school, but then a couple months earlier for some of the large fellowships. Some of the grad assistantships, again, will be part of the application process if they're through the department. But you'll have to do your own homework to kind of see where those grad assistantships typically will be in other departments. And oftentimes you may not know that until you get your acceptance letters back sometime in January or February from some of the programs. So it would be an advantage for you to start doing your homework ahead of time to figure out what are some of the departments that you may be interested in contacting if you do gain acceptance. Some website that may be helpful also, obviously Googling anything nowadays will allow you to kind of find some information. So if you say graduate school funding in anthropology or graduate school funding in X, you'll find different kind of resources that may be out there that you didn't think about before. UCLA has a wonderful website, a database that you can kind of look at, and then Pathways of Science also has different funding opportunities for students. That would be a great source. If you are interested in kind of getting some international experiences, I would say, again, contacting the Office of Prestigious Awards. There are some international fellowships that allow students to do their education abroad. And so if they do win either the Rhodes or the Marshall or some of the other kind of funding opportunities, they have the opportunity to kind of, again, get their education abroad at specific institutions. The Fulbright program is another opportunity for students to not only live and conduct research, but also critical languages abroad. And so that would be another thing that if you are interested in kind of taking some time to get some international experience, that might be a program you're interested in looking at. And UCF has a very good track record of students that have won the Fulbright before. So again, I would recommend that you talk to the Office of Prestigious Awards if you're interested in getting additional information about the Fulbright. So again, can't stress enough kind of making that plan for you to start thinking about grad school kind of early, estimating the cost, what it may kind of cost for you to attend so that you can kind of figure out with your funding if you have enough to kind of make that kind of work for you. And then again, start planning now by looking at all the different kind of opportunities that are out there and deadlines so that you can start to kind of create that plan of action. We are here to help in any way that we can. And so I definitely kind of say, if you haven't already, make sure that you go to the tiny URL to kind of sign in and get some additional information so we can follow up with you. Also, additional plug for our grad advising. If you are interested in kind of following up with one of our peer advisors who have gone through the process of applying to graduate school, can start thinking about funding opportunities for you, or just even how you start to kind of think about the conversation about graduate school. They are there to help, and I know that they would be excited to continue this conversation with you. So I think that is it. And so that's our information. We'll be here a little bit afterwards if you have additional kind of questions that you may want to kind of ask. Again, if we need to let anyone know that you've been part of this workshop today, and if you have gone to at least 95% of the kind of workshop, then we will provide that information over to our partners to make sure that they know you've attended. So the tiny URL is here. And then if you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you all so much.
There's a question in the chat. It says, would notes be added to the bottom of these documents?
I can see if we can. If there, we'll send the information out. If there's specific information that your questions that you have, just let us know. We can always kind of provide more information for you or go over some additional details. I talk a lot, so I don't even know if I go back and put notes in there, what the notes would even say. But I will try and get you as much information as you need, but also if there is follow-up kind of information that you need, we are all here to kind of help. And so let us know how we can kind of help you from there.
There's another question. I would like to take the GRE, but due to the pandemic, would it be available to take online? I did see something about the GRE trying to do some online courses.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
how.
So the GRE has shifted now, where they have technology now where you can take it in home, and so they have done a lot with AI, and so there is. I'll look for the information, Lisette, and if we have your email in there, we'll follow up with you to send you the information. But you can take it from home. You'd have to kind of log into their site, and it watches you, throughout the whole time. It scans your room to make sure that you don't have someone sitting next to you and all these crazy kind of things. But you do have the capability of taking that. Are you interested? What type of program are you interested in applying to? Okay, so yeah, and you may also want to kind of check with communication sciences orders kind of programs, because they may or may not be, some programs are being more flexible this year, this upcoming process, than they have in the past based on standardized tests, because they know that it hasn't been available for a lot of students. And so you may want to check with the program to see, but if you do need to take it, there are ways that educational testing services are looking to kind of do that. And UCF is actually a site now for testing, and I know that they are looking to kind of work with ETS again, that if in the fall, if things get a little bit better, there's some additional testing times that would be available here at UCF. So we'll give you some additional information.
Yeah, and I would definitely back up what he's saying with checking with your this programs you're interested in. Like if you may have a list of your top programs, check if they require the GRE, because I applied to 9 different programs and I did not take the GRE because none of the programs I was interested in required the GRE. So that might be an option to seeing if your top schools even require the GRE for your program. No problem.
We'll give you the spotlight again, George.
Oh, they're thanking us. You're welcome, Coco and Francesca.
Yeah, so let us know. We will have a couple more workshops
Kevin,
that are
Ashley,
that will be available virtually. But if there's anything we can do to help out, let us know. If you want to talk specifically about a graduate program that you're interested in, the peer advisors are available to kind of talk with you specifically about some of those programs. And then if we have a student who
Shania.
has applied to one of those programs,
Yeah.
we can definitely
Jada.
get you in touch with them. So thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay healthy and safe. And good luck with finals. I guess finals are next week. Is that right?
I think so.
Oof. So yes, this year has
I
been
know.
crazy.
I think it's 2 weeks. Let me check that. I should know that. I think it's 2 weeks. Finals is in. Whoa, I think they start next week. Wow.
It's start next week because graduation is in 2 weeks.
Yeah, finals are next week. That's crazy.
So yes. Well, all of you enjoy. Let us know how we can help out, and we will talk with you all soon.
See you guys.